Hello again, and welcome back to our series on watersheds in Virginia. If you haven't seen part one, I recommend you go back. That's where we talk about what is a watershed and what watershed do you belong to. In this part, we're going to be looking at the different aspects of a watershed and a watershed as an ecosystem, okay? So the first things we're going to look at using an interactive model are the abiotic factors within a watershed. These are things like the water supply itself, the topography, so the slope of the land, right? How steep it is, how quickly water would run downhill, and also there's different soil that might be in the area. The second thing we're going to look at are the human interactions that could impact the quality of the water in our ecosystem. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to look at a different model right here. Okay, and we're going to point out a number of different things within this model. So we're going to look at this as an ecosystem, this watershed as an ecosystem. So first off, I want to point up here, we have an industrial area. All right, there's a lot of concrete, there's a lot of areas in which there isn't much natural soil. Okay, then we move down here to an agricultural area. That's quite different. There's a lot of soil going on. There's a farmer moving his tractor. There are cows, there are chickens and different things happening. Okay, now we move over here and you can probably point out, right, we have roadways with cars on them. Same up here, okay? As we continue along here, we find a neighborhood, all right? Within this neighborhood, we have a number of different families living, and at the back of the neighborhood, there's some new construction going on. Okay, we now have this area here, which is a forest area. This area is slightly elevated and raised compared to the other areas. So that is the difference with the topography. Again, that's that slope of the land and how quickly water is going to move in it. Over here, we have a golf course. And what I would like you to be able to see is based on our last video and how we explained that water molecules always like to find more water molecules, okay? So we can see that we have different streams and creeks, and where do they all lead? That's right, they all lead down here to this body of water. All right, that is that one catchment place, that single place where all of this water is eventually going to end up. Now, from our last video, I hope you remember what the name of this watershed would be if you were living in Northern Virginia. That's right, very good, the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, and so here we can see this ecosystem. And right now you can see that the quality of this water is beautiful. It is very clear. There is nothing going on at all. So the next thing we're going to look at is those human interactions. What human interactions are happening within this ecosystem that might impact the quality of the Chesapeake Bay, that watershed? I'll give you a second to think in your mind about all of these different parts of the ecosystem. Think about what activities these humans could be doing that could negatively be impacting the quality of the water. I'm going to go ahead and start up in this industrial area. Okay, so we have this industrial area right here. And what are some things that might be added or a byproduct of this industrial area? Okay, so we have some oil and we have some sludge. Okay, have different things. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this. Now, where else might you see some oil happening in this environment? On the roads, we would definitely see some oil, maybe from these cars that are not being looked after very well. So we'll put some of that on there. Maybe up here in this construction area, right? They've got these different things going. There might be some chemical spills or something like that. All right, we're done with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this area here, the homeowners of this ecosystem, okay? And the story is that the gentleman who lives in that blue house walked out of his house one day and he decided that he wanted to have the greenest lawn in the whole neighborhood. And so he went to the store and he went and bought something that would make his grass really green and healthy looking. Any ideas on what that might be? Starts with an F and it ends in fertilizer. That's right, fertilizer. Okay, so he went out and he decided, you know what, I'm going to sprinkle some of this stuff all over here. And his neighbor came out and he saw that was happening. And so he decided, man, I want that as well. So they all started sprinkling. Okay. The same with the golf course manager. Who else in this environment might be using fertilizer to make things grow? That's right, the farmer down here. So the farmer did the same thing, didn't really think about how much they needed to use, and so they just started sprinkling everywhere. Okay, that's great. The problem then became that there were a bunch of pests, a bunch of things that they didn't want because they had such a nice environment for these pests to live in. So the gentleman who lives in this blue house, he went to the store and he bought a bunch of pesticide, you guessed it. And so he went out and he started sprinkling pesticide everywhere to kill those bugs. He didn't really do much research, though, about how much to sprinkle or what to do with it. And the farmer did the same thing. All right. So now we can see that there's a bunch of different things going on in this environment. The last thing that I'll point out as a human interaction is up here in this wonderful forest area, right? There is a bunch of soil, as we can see depicted here in brown, okay? Now that soil is great and it's really healthy. But the problem is when humans decide maybe we want to do some construction and we cut down these trees. So now let me give you a second to think about what do you think is going to happen to this soil now that those trees have been cut? Another way to ask the question is, what are those trees doing to keep the soil in place? Okay, so we have a bunch of loose soil. And the answer to my question is, those trees, the roots of those trees and vegetation, they're acting as an anchor to hold all of this soil here. Without those trees, there's no anchor, and that soil is free to go wherever it is taken, okay? The other thing we're gonna look at with this, maybe there's some soil here, okay, as well as here on the farming area, all right? What else this is going to impact, okay, is there may be some poop that is added to this environment because of these cows hanging out here in this creek. Okay, we don't really want poop in our water. So these are all the human interactions that potentially could impact what is going on. So you'll have to join us next time in the next video to see how those human interactions impact the quality of the water that is happening in our watershed. Thanks for joining us and hope to see you soon.